book is a direct response to the pregnancy with my first child. What happened then? I was a fellow, a creative arts fellow at Waterstones College, Oxford, and I had these 4 years or something to do nothing except read books and write books, and to do as little or as much teaching as possible. And my husband and I, we decided that we'll have our first child there. And I was talking to him about the possibility of not teaching my son Romanian, the language. And I was saying, okay, well, he can learn Italian because obviously you're Italian. He can learn English because we were born, he was born in England here. And Romanian, no, because I have such bad associations with the language and because of the history of my family there. But then as the pregnancy advanced, I started singing to him all these Romanian songs and reciting to him all these Romanian poems that I knew from childhood and also prayers. And then I found myself contradicting what I was trying to say to my husband. And that also with, the book is also a result of a friendship with William Fiennes, who was a creative arts fellow with me at Waterstones, and he was saying that I really must write it. We were talking about different books people write and why should you write them. But why would I go back to Romania in that sense? I mean, you know, when you are away from your country, whether you are actually returning to your country or not, in a physical way, you're taking the trip there, you're actually always returning through memories. I mean, you know, the way I live my life is by always comparing my experiences here in England or in Ireland where I lived, or in the United States where I lived, and now in France. I always compare them to the first experiences of my life, you know, the food, the way people dress, the way people talk, what people dream about, what they're thinking that their lives are going to be about. So you always kind of return to your early experiences. So that's really the need to go back there. And then because it wasn't a physical return to Romania, this is more like Ovid's Tristia. You know, he starts, the great poet Ovid, he writes the book actually from the modern day Romania, you know, his Tristia. And he starts the poem by saying, "Go book to the places I once loved and bring them my greeting. You know, let me reach them with what feet I may." So the book is actually, you know, a metaphor for going back. You reach the country with the feet of the book, as it is. The voice of a child is crucial in a story like this. One knows very well the experiences of the people who take on governments, the people who make history, the experience of the heroes themselves. But no one knows what a child of a person like this must go through. It's not a voice that you often hear about it. So I think the idea that you would have the story of the family and the experiences of the child was very strong to me. It was a very strong need to express. I mean, I will be writing about my father and his experiences in the next book and stuff like this. But the voice of a child I thought was quite important to have as well. So, you know, I've sacrificed sort of the wisdom of a 37-year-old for, you know, the silliness and, you know, have this, whatever you want to call, you know, the child, you know, the innocence of the child. In a story like this, where there is so much historical pain and there's so much possibility to blame people and events, the trauma behind, I thought that the best thing to do is to become a camera. You know, a child is a camera who sees, doesn't always understand, and doesn't have the possibility to reflect. Another thing that is related to reflection is that when we were going through my father's imprisonment and to the prison visits and having everything registered in a house, we were not given the possibility to reflect then. We were very busy surviving. We were very busy making the next step, making the next move, thinking about the next sentence that we would say that would actually save our lives or save another visit to the police or to the Securitate headquarters. Okay, so the reflection didn't come, so it would have been very dishonest for me to write it from the perspective well, I wrote the book when I was 37, so of a 37-year-old woman who could sort of look back on her life and say, look at the horror of what had happened to us, So if before I thought that I've had two lives, a life in Romania and a life in the West, now I think of myself as having a third life yet, which is, it's an extraordinary experience because the life in the secret files on my family, the one that documents at what hour we woke up, what we ate, how many minutes we stopped to look at a window shop. We responded to provocations that they were putting us through. I found things as letters to boyfriends that I wrote when I was, 16 or something like this, that I thought I was only meant to see them myself. Or for him to see them, and suddenly they're part of the official records. And also fights with my boyfriends that are now they are recorded and they were sent to the headquarters in Bucharest from the local police. This kind of sense of violation. But also another thing that I have is an access to my father's life when he was in his 20s. This is a kind of, how do you say, in a natural order of being, you probably shouldn't know what your parents were doing, dreaming about, what kind of mistakes, what kind of humiliations, what kind of fears, and also what kind of hopes they had when they were younger. And you could know it, and you should know it if they tell you about it, in a way, that we tell our children about our lives. But you shouldn't know it from the point of view of a state police record, where they're trying to portray your parents as, hysterical people who disrupt the public order and who are a nuisance, and they should be put in jail. You know what I mean? They're not even portrayed as the actual political dissidents sacrificing themselves for their country. So I feel like I have this sort of time machine access to, when my father was arrested the first time in 1961. For example, I know what he had in his room. He had a green table with 2 green chairs, with a green, he loved everything green, he painted everything green, a green wash basin. And they have taken those from him. Confiscated them along with his wallet with one photo, and do you know what I mean? I don't know, I feel like I am in sort of invading a private line that I shouldn't be invading. Do you see with this? I thought that after writing Burying the Typewriter, before I had the first time access to the files in July 2010, I thought that somehow I arrived at a kind of peace, that I might just cool down a bit, or just sort of let it all settle for a while. I don't think I would ever be capable to write poetry in Romanian or to write literature in Romanian, for different reasons, for many reasons. One being the association with it, but the other one being having been away from the language for so long. But I think what's more disturbing now is that when I find these documents, these are piles and piles and piles of documents written in my native language against me, against my family. It makes me, how do I say? It makes it very difficult to forgive it, in a sense. Do you know, I can't take my personal feelings against the whole country and against the whole language. But then at the same time, everything that ever happened, and now that I have the evidence that, things that I thought maybe I'm just paranoid about, maybe this is not a shadow, maybe this is not a shadow of a person, maybe this is a tree. Now that I find that there's a shadow who wrote my life for me, who was literally outside the window watching us crying the night my father came from prison, and then writing down notes on it, stuff that I read now, which, just really breaks my heart. It even complicates even more the relationship that I have with the language, because it's in my language, and the more I read it, the more all of those feelings come back.